Welcome to the Grand Rapids Label video blog series. It's a series we've been doing for a little while now, a few years, and it's dedicated to innovation discussions and forward-looking discussions as it relates to the label industry. I'm Bill Bergstrom with Grand Rapids Label. We're a fourth-generation family-owned and operated label converter here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so we're interested in these conversations. We've been in business for a long time, celebrating 140 years this year, and we're interested in being successful for many, many more going forward. So we enjoy the conversations around innovation and what's coming at us in the label industry. We hope that the viewer does as well and take some real value from chatting about the types of things that are impacting labeling and converting so they can make smart choices when it comes to partners. So today, we're here to talk about sustainability. If you're familiar with Grand Rapids Label, we spend a lot of time in Q2 year over year celebrating and talking about environmentalism and sustainability. John, right? John Crosby here, our internal champion, vice president of operations, say hello.
Hello, Bill. Hello, Roz.
And congrats, John, right? 2 years of landfill free here recently celebrating. So a little indication of how important this topic is to Grand Rapids Label. And today, super excited to be joined with Rosalyn Bandy, the Vice President of Sustainability for TLMI. So Roz, say hello.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Thanks for joining. Boy, Roz, again, 15-ish years in the labeling industry, but you've been surrounding yourself with the sustainability and the environmental conversation for quite some time, even before your kind of movement into labeling. Am I right there?
Yes. Professionally, yeah, I probably, I don't know, going on 20 years or so.
Yeah.
But, personally, I'm the daughter of a forester and the granddaughter of a professor at the local forestry college. So it's been like in the blood.
Deep,
DNA.
Deep. Yeah, deep. Well, that's awesome. Again, thanks for joining, and we want to get to content. And so we'll kind of set up the format here. Again, we want to frame these as innovation discussions, and again, today's topic around the sustainability and maybe the greening of the label industry and things of that nature. And we do that usually by looking at some horizons. We'll start with a little commentary on where we are today, right, in regards to the label industry and green practices and what's out there. But then we'll want to look ahead, right? We'll the first milestone, kind of maybe what's coming in the short term, or my definition of short term, kind of 1 or 2 years out. And then we'll want to spend some time even looking a little bit further, maybe 4 or 5 years out, to give the viewer and provide the viewer with again, real takeaway, maybe some actionable items that they can implement or utilize themselves around their own practices, around questions they want to ask of their label provider, that nature. So let's do just that. You guys, again, thanks for joining. This will be a ton of fun, and I'm going to back away, right? We really want to highlight the great content. But Roz, maybe start us off if you would, right? Kind of state of the label industry sustainability conversation. Where are we as we sit here, only a few days out from Earth Day 2024, right? That's, I believe, Monday, April 22nd. So where are we today in the label industry?
Well, Bill, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate that. There is a lot going on. First of all, directly associated with the label industry is, of course, label matrix and release liner. Those are things that have been with the label industry since pressure-sensitive labels arrived. And we are always working on that. TLMI has numerous committees that work on various aspects of sustainability, and we're continuously working on getting that material out of landfill or recycled. And that work continues and will continue until we, find a solution that applies to everybody. But what I'm hearing from TLMI members, whether suppliers or converters, is that they really want to know what their customers are facing. So what is it that's happening legislatively that are going to be affecting consumer-facing brands or retailers? And of course, everything needs a label. And those impacts are going to trickle down to the label industry to help support the sustainability initiatives or legislative actions that are facing producers in our economy.
Yeah, John, you've been involved again for us in the sustainability conversation for a long time. And then you have this really cool connection through TLMI around the conversation as well. Kind of weigh in here, right? And help us, keep it going here. How would you add to what Roz is saying, right? That love the fact that the end user needs going to drive a lot of the conversation. How would you add to that?
Yeah, well, one thing I want to point out is Roz's position is like at the nexus of TLMI membership, which is converters and suppliers, and brand owners, right? Roz, you speak to a lot of brand owners on a regular basis, and government affairs type work, right? TLMI has a government affairs committee known as the RAC, and always looking at legislation at the states and so on. So you're the center point, you're the conduit of all that. So Roz, when you mentioned that that TLMI members want to know what their clients are facing, I mean, can you expand on that a little bit from the client side, the brand owners? I mean, what are you hearing? Maybe what's changed in the last couple of years? What's the tone of the brands? Because at Grand Rapids Label, we have a small group of customers compared to the broad base. I'm just kind of curious what the trend lines look like with client conversations.
Well, you're right. I mean, we have, as I mentioned, we have numerous committees. One of those committees is the Regulatory Affairs Committee, in which we have a consultant out of Washington who monitors all of that for us. So what TLMI provides to its members is resources and education on topics that are trending and are need to know. In terms of, what our members want to know about right now is extended producer responsibility. That's a very hot topic because there are, 4 states that have passed legislation, other states that are working on passing legislation, and this is all legislation that is going to transfer the cost of recycling from, municipalities, counties, to the actual producer. So the producer, and these are customer-facing or consumer-facing products, the producer wants to make all of its products recyclable, because if they're not recyclable, and there are some exceptions, but if they're not recyclable, they will be charged a fee to help cover the cost of not recycling those products. So we know everything needs a label, and a label can impact the recyclability of a container. So our members all want to know, what can I do to help my end users who are facing EPR legislation and want to keep their fees as low as possible? So that's a very, very hot topic right now.
And Roz, the EPR, right? You have the end user, I'll call the client, but then you have the converter like us, and you have suppliers. Who is EPR hitting first, and how's it going to cascade? Do we have a sense of that?
Well, it's going to hit those companies that sell the products. So, the brand essentially. And so it would it would be an expectation to have that consumer-facing brand, you know, whether it's food, beverage, personal care products, to come to the converter and say, does the label I'm putting on, for example, my plastic container, doesn't meet the guidelines for recyclability? And there are very specific guidelines that are mentioned in the current EPR schemes. And those recycling guidelines refer to plastic and follow the Association of Plastic Recyclers design for recyclability guidelines. There's testing protocol for it. And, you know, once you go through all your label, adhesive, inks, etc., go through that testing protocol, you actually receive a letter from APR and their technical committee that has reviewed everything. And then you can present that letter to your end use customer and say, yes, indeed, this label meets all those guidelines that the EPR scheme would like you to meet, and here's the proof. So a lot of TLMI members are wanting to get up to speed with the APR design for recyclability. And again, that's the Association of Plastic Recyclers. Great website, tons of information about the testing protocol. And they even have a design guide for every label on every type of plastic. So it's very, very informative. That's kind of the hot topic right now. You know, we just came off of our annual converter conference, and I was able to speak with quite a number of our converters, and that's what they're saying. You know, we're a little confused. Where can we go for information on this to help our customers?
Yep. And again, so EPR, how many places has that become legislation, or how many places has that being discussed? I mean, how big is it right now?
There are 4 states that have passed legislation, and they're in various aspects of getting all of that set up. And that can take, you know, a couple of years to get going. And then California is also working on it. I mean, California is, I think I read somewhere, is the 5th largest economy in the world. Yeah. So a lot of companies are going to be providing products into California, and California certainly will follow the APR design guide. So again, you know, Colorado has spelled out their EPR design scheme, and it does call out the Association of Plastic Recyclers design guide. That's one state, but it's a model for all of the other states. Yeah. And the APR design guide is going to be uniform, my prediction, across all APR schemes. It's accepted across the world.
Yeah, and then there you go, right? So like we talk a little bit of horizons on this, you know, the specific kind of video blog structure. So that is the question, right? You know, you have some early adopters, right? Everything plots on a bell curve, right? You got the early adopters of this, but then it's going to go to the masses. And maybe, John, that's where you were headed, right? You know, and as that goes and grows, you know, the pressure is going to end up in lots of places, you know, where, you know, broaden your portfolios there, material suppliers, right? Maybe converters. Make sure you're doing your work to track and make sure you're participating with those portfolios. Is that where this is headed, you guys, or you know, what's kind of next in this conversation?
Well, I think exactly right. Sorry, John. Those labels that I'm mentioning that meet the APR design guide, the label substrates exist. The ink systems exist. You know, it's all there and has been there in the market for many years. So it's just a matter of converters getting on board with it, you know, developing their own type of product line, and ensuring that, you know, this meets with what their customers are looking for. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to poke a little fun at it. I mean, environmentalists have been accused of being alarmists before. So we have to be a little careful. No, okay, not you personally. So we have to be a little careful about that, but you can see the momentum here. And I think that's an important part of your message, and what we want to make sure is conveyed to people listening is EPR is very likely here to stay, right? It's got a foothold now. And it's just a matter of time, state by state, how it unfolds. I mean, Canada's already incorporated it in some provinces, I believe. And
Yes.
so it's a big concept.
Yeah.
And so one follow-up question I'd have to that is, okay, so I'm hearing this, I'm thinking, okay, maybe EPR is something I need to learn more about. Where would you point people for content? I mean, would you go to the Colorado legislation and find that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just doing a web search of extended producer responsibility, it will all come up. You know, you can look at what Maine is proposing and Colorado, and you know, the other thing is, remember that EPR actually has been around for a long time, but it's been around things like mattresses and batteries.
Batteries, yeah.
You know, I mean, like, I live in New York State. We've had a battery EPR scheme for a long time. But yeah, I would just Google it, and all of, you know, lots of opinions will come up, lots of facts, lots of the state schemes will come up, and you know, you'll get a general idea of what it is.
Sure. Sure.
Well, and I like then that connection to APR too, right? APR, it's a plug for another industry group, but they've done a fabulous job creating a design guide. And we have seen requests from customers come in with APR just in the last year, right?
Yeah.
So
for sure.
You're seeing activity.
For sure. We've maybe we in some of our pre-work did we talk about this? It's 2025. You know, when you ask some of those questions of suppliers, John, we've talked about some of them internally. It seems like a big year for people, right? There were some goals I think put out maybe even pre-pandemic, and maybe 2025 seemed like a really long way away. Right. And you know, here we are knocking on its doorstep. Is that corresponding to anything that people should be aware of?
Well, in my mind, 2025 is a big year for another organization that I'd like to mention, and that is the U.S. Plastics Pact, which is another organization that people should kind of have on their radar. So the U.S. Plastics Pact, there are plastics pacts all over the world, and they are part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. But in the US, 2025 is the year that the pact had developed their roadmap to meet certain goals by 2025. And do you want to hear those goals?
Are they inspirational or terrifying? Or, yeah.
Well, I think they might be a little of both.
All right, fair enough.
But by the US Plastics Pact, and the reason I want to mention it is because if you go to the US Plastics Pact website, you will see all of the brands, retailers, municipalities, you name it, trade associations, TLMI is part of it.
Suppliers,
that converters that have signed on as an activator and have actually committed to take action toward these 3 2025 goals, and here they are. Number 1, 100% of plastic packaging will be reusable, recyclable, or compostable. That's goal number 1. Number 2, all of the activators will undertake action to recycle or compost 50% of plastic packaging. So, you know, take a look at all of the icons on the PACT's website. There's a lot that are recognizable. And number 3, achieve an average of 30% recycled content or responsibly sourced bio-based content in plastic packaging. 2025.
Yeah.
So
and I agree, Roz, and I actually have the website up right in front of me here. And there are several of our customers on that activator list, and a lot of our suppliers,
yes.
which then will lead us to another conversation of how to engage with your clients and your suppliers. There are people that are making these commitments that you're associated with.
So and as an activator, each activator has made a commitment to work on these three roadmap goals, and every year they have to report on what they do, and there's a specific rubric on that reporting criteria. So it's serious, and the pact is really, I want to say, holding people's feet to the fire to get these things done. But barring, the APR design guide, extended producer responsibility, and the US Plastics Pact, what can companies do like right now? Okay, we're not familiar with any of that. We want to get started. We're in a panic. What do we do? I'll tell you what I suggest to people. Number one, be familiar with your customers' sustainability goals. Are they an activator in the pact? I mean, are they committing to doing these things? Or do they have other sustainability goals? Be familiar with it and find out how you can help. You're part of the supply chain. You're part of their supply chain, and they do need assistance in meeting their goals. The other thing I would suggest is look, at your own house. What are you tracking, if anything? Are you tracking your electricity usage, your natural gas usage, how much waste you are generating? What part of that waste are you recycling, or could you recycle? Have you done a waste audit? Have you had your waste hauler come in and look at what they can possibly help you recycle? I mean, I have to say, knowing the Grand Rapids story, you guys are like a stellar example. And I often tell people about all of the things that you've done in-house, because being 100% landfill free is no small achievement. But really, looking in-house, starting your own type of metrics to track, and there are resources out there to help you do that. One, if you're involved in ISO at all, ISO 14001 is one. It's actually a certification, and Sustainable Green Printing Partnership is another certification that you could go for. But if you don't want to, if you don't feel like you're ready, you can also go to the SGP website and just utilize all of their criteria. They have a great resource library on how to get started on any of these, whether you get certified or not. It's just great ideas and a great place to get started.
Roz, that is super helpful, right? We can replay this video and just kind of make a list of the different reference tools and websites to go from an education standpoint, but also an action standpoint, right? I appreciate you mentioning those things. That's an outcome that we want when we do these videos. That's a goal of these videos, is to provide people with meaningful action, right? We spend time talking about the state of affairs and what's out there, but ultimately it comes to action. John, add to that too, right? We love celebrating our story. We're very proud of it, and you are the driver here behind that. So A, thanks, and B, again, bring it to some practicality for folks. Right? Going to an SGP website, there's a ton of information there, right? And it's there could be a perception it's overwhelming, or, oh my gosh, we could never accomplish these things, but you can, right?
Right.
Or you can pick 2 or 3 things,
right?
And just start with those 2 or 3 things. But the Grand Rapids story is a great story. So John, sorry.
No. Well, I mean, just to give some perspective on it, it took us 10 years to be landfill free.
Yeah.
And when you're in the midst of that, that seems like a long time. But in hindsight, that's right, a great 10 years spent, right? And every year we improved. But that's the kind of time it took us. You could go faster, you could go slower, but that's what it took us. And I always advocate when people ask what to get started on, I always advocate that landfill free is the thing to pursue, because to me, it's like a flywheel type of a thing, right? You get going on that, you bring in measurements like you're talking about, Roz. You're knocking down hurdles, which anything you pursue, you're going to find hurdles. You're working with partners, and you're engaging. What I love is you're engaging your employees, right? Everybody wants to get things out of the landfill. I mean, it really is universal. I don't know many people anymore that are like, just throw it in the landfill. So it really creates a positive culture as well. And then that can be transferred over to energy savings, right? The next thing would be, let's get some LEDs in these, these warehouse lights, and there's a great ROI for that. But it just builds momentum. And I think from a very practical standpoint, landfill avoidance is a great place to start.
Yeah. It's awesome. I have learned in getting just prepped for this, I've learned more about the available resources. Roz, you've turned me on to some. I think I maybe have shared. We have a big meeting next week with a lovely client of ours who's very serious about learning more in regards to their labeling and packaging, and specifically the APR side of the conversation that we had today. So that will be these conversations, and John, you hit on it too. They're real, right? And Roz, you mentioned that, right? The end users are the real conversations happening inside of them, and we all need to be prepared for it to facilitate it and move forward as a group. So you guys, can't thank you enough for doing this just like that. That's kind of our time that we usually allot for these types of things. We'll have, again, plenty of opportunity to call out all the great resources, Roz, that you've mentioned. Thank you so much. Thanks for your advocacy. Thanks for your leadership in our industry. Thanks to TLMI for creating that space for you as an individual to broaden people's awareness. And obviously, thanks for doing this with us today. No doubt, tons of great takeaway for anybody that views the video. So really, really appreciate it. And of course, John, you're right down the hall, mate. It's a ton of fun to go through all this stuff with you. So thanks for joining as well. So
thank you. And Roz, great having you share your knowledge. I mean, it's a vast amount of knowledge you have about the industry. So really appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you bet, you guys. Thank you.